Hi everybody. I am pre-recording this video to be posted on Thursday, April 2nd. I am filming it on Saturday night, March 28th. Today I'm here to talk to you about some fan theories for a couple of other shows that I like to watch besides Friends. One of these fan theories actually connects to Friends, so I'm gonna actually talk about that one first and then move into all the other ones. So the theory that connects to Friends is for How I Met Your Mother, and it is basically stating that, so as you guys all know, how I Met Your Mother works is Ted Mosby, who is played by Josh Radnor, is telling the story to his kids about how he met their mother. Their mother, Tracy, died of an unknown illness in 2024, and this show is set in 2030. So he's talking to his teenage children, who are named Luke and Paige, about how he met their mother. And how this show connects to Friends is that Friends is basically how she pictures her husband's friend group. So, as I said when I was reviewing the book I read last month, that's written by the director of How I Met Your Mother, that's not how it happened. My theory was correct that the characters from How I Met Your Mother are similar to characters from Friends. As I said in that video, Ted is Ross, Robin is Rachel. I also said that Robin is sort of like Phoebe, but in this fan theory where Tracy is inserting herself in the friend group, she inserts herself as Phoebe because she is a wedding musician. She plays the guitar in a wedding band, and that's how she meets Ted. Lily and Marshall are Monica and Chandler, and Barney is Joey. I think this theory checks out because if you have seen Friends and How I Met Your Mother, you can tell how all of these characters definitely have similar personalities to each other. So I'll get back to the How I Met Your Mother theories in a minute. I just wanted to mention that fan theory really quickly because it connects to the TBR that we're doing for Friends and Gilmore Girls. The first so I have 15 fan theories here. 5 for Seinfeld, 5 for The Office, and 5 for How I Met Your Mother. Technically 4 because I just shared one of them. So we're going to start with Seinfeld. Susan faked her death to get away from George. I think this theory is totally true based on the fact that you can kind of tell that Susan doesn't really like George very much. And also her parents don't really seem to like her either. So I think her parents definitely helped her to fake her death to get away from him. And in the YouTube video I watched for research for this video, the person who was talking about this theory went on to say that Susan was a lesbian, so she not only faked her death to get away from George, but she also faked her death to get away from her parents because they were very heteronormative in their viewpoints and they didn't support their daughter's relationship. So in my headcanon, the episode where Susan and George are getting ready for their wedding is set at the same time that the episode where Rachel and Ross goes to Barry and Mindy's wedding is set. So my theory is that goes along with this theory about Susan faking her death to get away from George is that she changes her identity so that way George cannot track her down. And she gets married. Her girlfriend's name is Ella, and they end up living in the same apartment as Carol and Susan. And Carol and Seinfeld Susan, who is played by Holly Swedberg, they bond over having heteronormative parents, because if you guys remember from the one with the lesbian wedding, Carol almost calls off her wedding because her parents don't approve of her marriage to Susan. So I can see Susan Ross, Seinfeld Susan, getting along really well with Carol, who was played by Jane Sibbett. And what I found really interesting is that Jason Alexander, who played George, confirmed in an interview that he and Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Michael Richards and Jerry Seinfeld did not have really good chemistry with the actress who played Susan. So that's why they kind of decided to kill off her character, which isn't a very nice thing to do. I may make a separate video at another time about how much I do not like George's character on Seinfeld. I've already talked about how much I don't like Ross. George is a whole different story. He has a whole other issue that I don't like him about, and that may be a separate video in the future. The next fan theory I wanted to talk about is Kramer is a widow and living off inheritance. So, if you have seen Seinfeld, you'll know that Kramer, who is played by Michael Richards, is the neighbor who lives across the hall from Jerry Seinfeld. And he is a bachelor. And as a kid watching this show with my parents, I always was a little confused at how he was able to afford the apartment by not working because he didn't have a job. So there are a couple of different theories. One is that he's a widow and that his wife passed away and he's living off her inheritance. If you have seen the episodes where you get to actually go inside his apartment, you will see like there's a lot of feminine aesthetics to the way the apartment is set up. That will show you that he was married before the show started and his wife passed away at some point. It is not known how she died or how Kramer even met her in the first place. The other theory that these videos posit about Kramer is he's a drug dealer, and like Newman is like the person who helps him with his finances for the drug smuggling or whatever. And the other one is that Jerry profits off of him to get ideas for his comedy shows, and that's he also profits off of Elaine and George's misery as well to get ideas for his comedy shows, which is not a very nice thing for him to do. The next Seinfeld fan theory I wanted to talk about is that Newman is using his mail delivery job to hide something darker. This talks about how Newman has a secret job on the side at night where he uses the mail delivery job during the day as a way to, like, do things that are illegal. Like, I think there's an episode where him and Kramer take cans that you can't take to the grocery store to get recycled to illegally get them deposited or something like that. And there's a couple of other schemes that he does that uses his mail delivery job as a cover-up. There's another theory about Newman that I also think is true, that he's jealous of Jerry's friendship with Kramer because of the fact that he's home all the time. So Jerry's job has weird hours, so he's home all the time, and Kramer doesn't work, so he's home all the time too. So he gets to spend a lot more time with Jerry, unlike Newman, and that's why Newman is jealous, because he has a 9-to-5 job and doesn't get as much time to spend with Kramer as a friend because of working and having a life. And then the last fan theory I wanted to talk about for Seinfeld is they all died in the plane crash, and they are in purgatory. So, if you have seen the Seinfeld finale, you will see that they're traveling somewhere on a plane to go on vacation, and then the plane crashes. This theory posits that they don't actually die, but they're waiting to get their judgment for all of the bad things they did throughout the series. And this theory posits that they are on trial for a year, or they are waiting for a year in a holding cell to go on to the courtroom. They are saying that the courtroom is in Massachusetts. I don't know why. Maybe because they're trying to compare this to, like, Salem witch trials or something. I don't understand why they would say the courtroom was in Massachusetts. But they're basically saying that they are in purgatory because they are waiting to get the final judgment for all of the sins they committed throughout the show. And, like, for example, the ribbon bullies, or whatever other issues that they had that they come up in the show. And there's another interesting theory that kind of connects to this with Jerry's apartment and how it's set up, and, like, basically they're using Jerry's apartment as, like, a way station for a place to wait to get the judgment. And the same thing goes with the diner that they have their lunches at all the time, Monk's Diner. The next set of fan theories that I have for you are from The Office. So currently we are on season 4, episode 5. So all of these fan theories relate to seasons 1 through 4. At a later date, I will do another video about the season 5 through 9 theories, which a lot of those theories are about the Scranton Strangler, and I haven't watched those episodes yet. But apparently there's an episode in season 7 where they're having a viewing party where they're watching a chase scene of the Scranton Strangler case, and I feel like that's supposed to be like a parody of O.J. Simpson. So if you have actually seen that episode of The Office, can you guys say whether or not you agree with me that that is supposed to be kind of making reference to O.J. Simpson? Because I totally think it is, especially since Toby is driving a car that was really popular in the 90s around the time when O.J. Simpson case was happening. The first fan theory for The Office I wanted to mention is that Kevin is a genius but pretends to be stupid to get airtime in the documentary. So this theory focuses on Kevin Malone, who works in the accounting department with Oscar and Angela. And this is so he comes off as somebody who like pretends to be dumb and stupid a lot of the time, but he isn't, because I mean, he is really good at so he's like really good at playing poker. Like he has won a world championship in poker. So like he's trying to play the fool and act really stupid when actually he is really smart. And he comes off to me as a very manipulative character in that way, because he basically pretends not to do his work or pretends like he's not smart. And basically Angela and Oscar have to cover his ass all the time because he doesn't do the math right. And there's also another theory that's saying he's actually embezzling money from Dunder Mifflin. So he is played by Brian Baumgartner, who has been on Celebrity Jeopardy a couple times, and he's really funny. There's another theory about Kevin on this list, and it talks about him convincing Jim to get back together with Pam. And this episode is at the end of season 3. So I can talk about this theory and vouch for the fact that it is true. Even though it is not actually seen, like what Kevin actually says to Jim fully, like it's only a 5-second soundbite, I think, of what he says to him. Like, you don't really get to see the full conversation between Jim and Kevin, but basically what I can analyze based on this theory is that he encourages Jim to get back together with Pam, and then obviously they get back together. At this point, Jim was dating Karen, who is played by Rashida Jones. Do I like Karen? Not really. Oh, and like, before I go on with these fan theories, I just want to say, when I was doing research on what fan theories to talk about, there's a fan theory that talks about later seasons when Jim was supposed to cheat on Pam, and this is something great because this is another instance where an actor stands up against his character cheating on the female lead. Matthew Perry did this about the Tulsa episode where Chandler was going to cheat on Monica, and John Krasinski did the same thing in season 7 of The Office, where there was supposed to be a cheating storyline with Jim, and instead of him cheating, there are just some scenes that are left out of the documentary that would have been representing like him going away to the hotel with the other girl or whatever, and John Krasinski, who is the actor who played Jim on The Office, he did something very similar to Matthew Perry and went into the writer's room and said, I don't want to do this storyline because I don't like the fact that Jim is cheating on Pam, and I'm really glad that he did that. Okay, the next fan theory for The Office I wanted to talk about is Jim is the writer of the documentary. And I think this is pretty obvious that you can tell that he's writing a documentary, because when you see him talking about certain things, you see him looking directly into the camera. And he is also making himself look like the nice guy in certain situations, which can be good and bad, because a lot of the time you see him being mean to Dwight and getting away with it, which I didn't like. But other than that, I really like Jim as a character. My favorite characters in The Office are Jim, Pam, Phyllis, Daryl, and Andy, who's played by Ed Helms, who does the voice of the Onceler in the Lorax movie. The next theory I wanted to talk about is Phyllis and Stanley had an affair. So, like, this was a theory that was formulated because in the episode where they talk about sexual harassment, they're talking about, like, what happens in the situation where two coworkers might have an affair. And, like, there are certain scenes in that episode where you can see Stanley and Phyllis, like, stealing glances at each other, but Phyllis Smith and the actor who plays Stanley, I can't remember what his name is, they denied that this theory was true and that Stanley and Phyllis had an affair. So this has been disproven by the actors. I didn't think it was true anyway, believe it or not, even before I watched this video, because when I saw that episode, I kind of didn't think that they were having an affair. Michael is a secret business genius. So the episode I wanted to reference in this video, for this theory, is the episode where Michael and Jan go to Chili's to try to get the business deal. And you can see in this scene where he's making the negotiations trying to make this business deal that that he's really good at what he does, and he deserves all of the awards that he gets for selling paper or getting people to do business with the company. So, I think that theory is absolutely true. Now, I already mentioned the How I Met Your Mother theory about how Friends is Tracy's imagined version of Ted's friend group as she is passing away. This is a very sad theory, but I loved how the person who made this YouTube video came up with this theory and was able to connect Friends and How I Met Your Mother together. But Miss Mojo also has a YouTube video about the top 10 ways that How I Met Your Mother rips off Friends. And I gotta say, so How I Met Your Mother first aired the year after Friends ended. And when I was watching this show when it first came out, I kind of noticed that it was very similar to Friends. Ways is similar is that A is set in New York, is based on a friend group of people who are in their 20s. The character personalities are similar, as I just said in the fan theory about Tracy imagining the characters from Friends as Ted's friend group. Yeah, I basically think that the people who made How I Met Your Mother basically used Friends as a blueprint for all of their characters. Because if you have seen the flashback episodes where you can see that just like Chandler and Ross, Marshall and Ted went to college together. I don't remember. So Ted is an academic like Ross. Ross is a paleontologist, but I don't remember what Ted teaches. But he also gets into a relationship with two of his students. So it's even worse than Ross dating Elizabeth, because he doesn't learn his lesson like the first time. So in my headcanon, actually, in my headcanon, after How I Met Your Mother ends, Ted actually meets up with Ross at the bar that him and his friends are at. And Ross eventually does lose his job because his past about dating Elizabeth catches up with him. And he continues his sketchy ways after dating Elizabeth, which leads him to get fired from the university, which should have really happened when he was dating Elizabeth, personally. I mean, there would have not been much drama if Rachel hadn't started dating Paul Stevens, and Bruce Willis would have been on the show for a short amount of time. He really made those episodes bearable to watch because he was so funny. But I talked in my video about age gap relationships, and I voiced my strong opinion about Ross and Elizabeth's relationship before, that I didn't like them together. Okay, so the next fan theory for How I Met Your Mother I wanted to talk about is Barney's suits are a metaphor for a drug addiction, and he dies prior to the 2030 timeline. So Barney is supposed to be the character for Joey. Barney and Joey Barney in How I Met Your Mother, who is played by Neil Patrick Harris, and Joey on Friends, who plays by Matt LeBlanc, are the womanizer characters on both of these shows. If you're familiar with Friends at all, you'll know that Joey is obsessed with eating sandwiches. In this situation, Barney is obsessed with wearing really fancy suits, and he does this whole musical dance number about wearing suits, where he's dancing on top of a taxi cab. If you haven't seen this episode of How I Met Your Mother before, you should definitely Google that clip of the musical number because it's really funny. And if you're not familiar with Neil Patrick Harris, he was also on Glee as Will's old college classmate, and they sing Dream On from Aerosmith together. That's another clip that you should look up. So yeah, this theory about Barney basically says that when he is suiting up, he's actually going on a drug binge, and then, like, when he's back to his normal personality at the bar, he's going through a relapse. And in the 2030 timeline where Ted is talking to his kids about his friends, he's actually reflecting on his friendship with Barney because he is not alive in the 2030 timeline. And I'm assuming that if he's not alive, he died of a drug overdose. And I'm thinking he died before Tracy died, because you see him drinking a lot of alcohol throughout the whole entire series. And honestly, I mean, it made me sort of think of Matthew Perry's drug and alcohol addiction in a way, with Barney's obsession with the suits. And yeah, I think he probably died in a similar way to the way Matthew Perry died. And in the 2030 timeline, Ted is reflecting on all of the fun times he had with his friends, including Barney, who has passed away. There's an episode called The Magical Meatball Sandwich where Barney is apparently on his deathbed, but it's ended up being a prank. I remember that episode, and I remember that was not a nice thing for Barney to do to his friends, to like pretend that he was dying just to get a sandwich. It's kind of stupid. I really felt bad for the rest of the characters in that scene because, like, what Barney was doing was pretty manipulative. How I Met Your Mother is a prequel to Full House. I think the only reason why this is a fan theory is because Bob Saget does the adult narration for Ted in How I Met Your Mother. I mean, so the reason why I don't think this theory is true is because of the kids obviously don't look the same to the Tanners. Obviously, the actors are different in this show than Full House, but you would think that if this show was supposed to be a prequel to Full House, Ted's kids would at least look like the Tanner children, or look like they were related to Danny Tanner, but they aren't. So I don't think that theory is necessarily true. I think the only reason why this theory is even a theory is because Bob Saget is the voice of older Ted. Ted has Alzheimer's disease and is telling his story to his kids before he forgets. This theory is really sad, actually, but so Tracy, who is Ted's wife, dies of a terminal illness 4 years before How I Met Your Mother takes place in 2024. No, wait, 6 years. 6 years. And it is really not known what she dies of. But one would assume it was a terminal illness. It might have been Alzheimer's. It might have been cancer. But they don't really say what she dies of. If she died of Alzheimer's, then Alzheimer's probably runs in their family. If she didn't die of Alzheimer's and Ted has Alzheimer's, perhaps it runs in his family. I don't know who comes up with these theories about these shows. But if this theory about Ted having Alzheimer's is true, I can see why he would be telling the story to his kids. But because I can sort of tell why people would think he would have Alzheimer's, because he's constantly changing things around because he forgets things and replacing things, certain aspects of the story with things that might not be true. So if he is forgetting details of a story that he's telling his kids, maybe that is the reason why. But then there's a whole other theory from this YouTube video that says Ted's kids are not even real and he's just rambling to himself about his life and his friends. Because the reason why this theory is true is if he was actually talking to real kids, they would be pausing the conversation, interrupting, going to get a snack, whatever. They would also probably be distracted by their phones. But the kids who are the actors for Ted's kids, Luke and Paige, they are just sitting completely still, not even reacting. But when they do say something, they say it with a lot of sarcasm. So I actually think that these kids are not even Ted's kids. I think that they're probably Barney's kids, because you don't see them being neurotic like Ted. You see them being calm, collected, and sarcastic like Barney. So I think that he's probably raising Barney's kids. And the next theory also connects to Barney, because later on in the series, Barney has a daughter who is named Ellie. And this baby is the product of a one-night stand from a perfect night that he had, or whatever. And the mother of this child is never shown. So I'm thinking that Ted's kids are actually Barney's kids. And maybe where was I going with this? Okay. So I think that Ted's kids are actually Barney's kids, who he's raising as his own, because Barney died earlier on. He died several years before because of his alcoholism, and he probably just took over raising Barney's kids because he probably died when they were younger. And I personally think that Barney had a one-night stand with Tracy when he was going through a hard time with his breakup with Robin, and that Ellie is also Tracy's kid. So yeah, that's where I stand. Let me know what, do you agree with these theories? Do you disagree? I really would like to converse with you guys about the fan theories that I talked about in this video. And please, I will link the previous video that I talked about fan theories about in my description box. Please share your thoughts on those fan theories too. And I will also link the videos in the description where I got these theories from, so you can see where I got my information, and maybe watch these videos and circle back to me and let me know if there are any theories you want to discuss. These channels that I found these videos on are called Movies Explained and the Hollywood Vault, in case you want to look them up yourselves. They have a whole bunch of different videos about movie, TV show, even book theories. Like they have like a video about book fan theories for like classic books. So I've actually been researching those videos, because a couple of those books that they talk about fan theories for are about books that I have read from the TBR, or books that I read last year that were not for Friends and Gilmore Girls TBR. So I might talk about my opinions on those theories in another video. Please, I really want somebody to discuss these fan theories with. So if you like any of these 3 TV shows, Seinfeld, Friends, How I Met Your Mother, and want to discuss these fan theories, I would love to hear from you. Have a great night or day, depending on when you watch this, because this is being pre-recorded, as I said before. It is being pre-recorded on March 28th to be posted on April 2nd at 10 a.m. Thank you.